We are live again. I think this is probably the best way to do this. All right. I'm just going to check how many people are in the room because people are going to be slowly coming in. Hopefully, this is my third attempt at a live today. So hopefully YouTube doesn't do me for spam because they're looking for any excuse at the minute to do whatnot to me. Mickey's here. We've got Mickey on the phone this time. And if you guys can give me a sound check, Mickey, just say hello to the people.
Hello, people. How you doing?
There we go, guys. Guys, can you just make sure? Can you hear Mickey there, nice and clear? Richard, if you can tell me if we can hear Mickey nice and clear. This worked fine last time. Got him on the speaker, holding it to the mic. Just gonna wait for a quick sound check from the audience to make sure we're ready to go, and then we are gonna carry on. Okay, right? They're saying the sound is good. All right, Mickey. Well, listen. The good news is it's a nice fresh live. The other one's been hidden now, so nobody will see that. So all the technical problems from the past are finished. All right. Yeah, that's it. That's it now. All the technical problems in the past are behind. Let me just make sure with the sound. 1 second that I can get that. Okie dokie. Right. Let's do this again. So what I was going to say to you before the line cut off actually was Dillian Whyte. Listen, I'll give you my opinion. I think he's injured, but I'm not sure if his injury is sufficient enough that he absolutely cannot fight. Let me know what you think about that.
You're probably not alone in thinking that. When asking yourself the question.
Well, I'm asking you.
Okay, so
All right, should we leave it at that then?
We can answer the question, but let's do it right.
Go.
So, you couldn't blame. I don't think in the boxing bit. In an ideal world, it'd be very nice if everyone's perfectly decent and honourable to each other, and overpays each other slightly and pays on time and does exactly right. In the real world of boxing, I can just tell you, and it's not. This isn't just my vision. I can tell you that I'm certain that nearly everyone that's involved in the industry, you become very cynical of people's motives, and you just have to you have to sort of understand that the culture of boxing, and it's quite toxic. When you're dealing with these people, a lot of them will do, and you see them on interviews. Oh, what a nice guy! If I ever met him, I'd be good mates with him. And right, no, like no. Most of them, probably in most businesses, they're in it to make money, and Dillian Whyte's in it to make money, and I wouldn't blame him for dropping, because I actually think he beats Otto Wallin, but I think that's a really hard fight, and I think even if he beats him, he looks terrible doing it.
Go, Mickey, let me quickly butt in. Do you not find it ironic that a lot of people were saying Otto Wallin was a bum when he fought Tyson Fury? Yeah, a lot of this last year. Otto Wallin's a bum. Yeah. He's a nobody. Can't believe Fury struggled against Wallin. The same people that were calling him a bum, Mickey, are the same people that are turning around saying it's a smart business decision for Whyte to avoid him.
Okay, look, I think Wallin surprised, including me, a lot of people in how well he did against Tyson Fury. Because if you look at it just on paper, like in Sweden has a notorious reputation for basically padding useless fighters and selling very average guys as if they're special, right? Yeah. And they fight journeymen and get beat, or they fight someone that's half decent and get beat. And I think most people looked at that padded record. Look at the people he's fought. Most of them very average. He hasn't been knocking them all out in a round or two. But he's not that kind of fighter. He's a southpaw. He actually boxes very clever. He's with Joey Gamache, good fighter, who's his trainer. And I think whoever's coached him has coached him very, very well. He gave Tyson Fury absolute nightmares. Even though Fury beat him clearly enough, he gave him heaps of problems. Massive problems.
Do you know? Let me just quickly butt in. Do you know what? Let me ask you. Earlier on, we spoke about what the advice you would give to Otto Wallin, right? Okay, yeah. And we're not going to go through that again. But you made a very, very good point, right? About maybe the manager, or maybe his team could have maybe got some things inserted into the contract that could have protected him, in case of late pullouts.
Yeah.
We had one of the most bizarre circumstances I think I've seen in boxing in a long time, Mickey. Recently, this week, we had a press conference, and we had a press conference to basically announce a pullout, and basically announced that Dillian Whyte was going to be fighting Tyson Fury. Now, here's my question to you. I want you to put your manager's hat on here, right? Dillian Whyte's his own manager, right? But if you were Dillian Whyte's manager, Dillian Whyte is a free agent, as I understand it, at the minute, right? He's completely free agent. He's not got any contractual obligations to any promoter, right?
Yeah.
And yet somehow he's been pulled into a live press conference with a promoter, aka Eddie Hearn, basically calling the shots on a fight with Tyson Fury and saying things like, well, we're expecting it to go to purse bid and, Dillian this and Dillian that. And apparently, I haven't seen the interview yet, but he's been going on IFL TV and all these sites and saying things like, well, Dillian needs us around because we can help him leverage this and leverage that. If you were Dillian Whyte, he's on the verge of one of the biggest paydays, right, of his career. Of what benefit does it have? Or does it? Is there something I'm missing, Mickey? What is the benefit to him having Eddie Hearn there in the background sort of doing his business?
Yes, there's a benefit to it because and I've done it with, I'm trying to think of a fight where I put, Danny Williams against Derek Chisora.
Okay.
Right, remember that a few years ago. So, Danny was the British heavyweight champion who I managed, and Chisora was who had to fight next, mandatory, and this is a young Chisora at this point.
Not the one that's been recycled on pay-per-view 500 times. Yeah.
Okay, so he was sort of a bit more of a live sort of prospect type champion. Right, so if I'd have gone into purse bids, this is what happened. They offered like a time, what I considered a tiny amount, right? Not enough money for us to want to go ahead with the fight on that basis. But it was disrespectful, I found, that they offered so small. But at the same time, why are they going to pay more than what they have to? Right? So that's why we got this small amount. Not out of disrespect. We got offered a small amount because they figured, well, if we don't do it, no one's going to do it. So what I done with Danny, Ricky Hatton had just got his promoter's deal with
Correct.
Scott.
Yeah, I remember. Keep going. I remember.
He was in an interesting position because he had dates and he didn't really have fighters. So we didn't even sign with Hatton, but I did everything externally to make it look like we had.
Right.
Then we went to purse bids. We ended up getting, I think it was more than double, might have even been triple what we'd been offered. I can't remember what numbers of it. But, okay, we got a massive purse bid.
Right.
Like, Danny Williams was very, very happy. He thought like I was the greatest manager ever. He was like, wow, how did you do? And, okay, so to take that same sort of dynamic in this situation, so you've got Otto Wallin, who's not really, people aren't chomping at the bit to see Otto Wallin fight anyone. Not even a rematch with Tyson Fury or, Wilder or, he's not really that level quite yet. But if you're trying to sell, okay, so to sell Dillian Whyte against Otto Wallin, I think is a hard sell. And actually, I don't think it's the right fight for Dillian Whyte. Why they chose him in the first place, I just couldn't understand.
But Mickey, let me quickly be rude and butt in. What you're saying there is very important, actually, because I just want to make this clear to the viewers, right, who didn't quite catch that. So I think I've probably got that wrong, because what you're saying is by aligning himself with Matchroom, or by aligning yourself with that kind of promotional vehicle, which everybody knows has got money, right? Especially in a purse bid situation, you can drive up the cost and get a better deal, right?
Yeah, if they can't just tell you what you're getting and that's our final, right? Because they know that Matchroom can compete with them, can put in a whopping bid as well. So Dillian, by turning it into a tug of war between the two sides, stands to make much more money. Because they've already been to purse bids many, many times and they know how much resources each other has got.
Yeah.
So to ensure that they get that, and Dillian has done, he's done the right thing. Because if he'd have gone cap in hand, they might have said, well, we'll give you that, and if you're not happy, you know, all right, we'll go to purse bid. But if they know they're going to purse bids against Matchroom, I think that's a lot more intimidating, and you'd be a lot more likely, I would imagine, to put a big
bid in. Mate, listen, what you said there absolutely makes sense. Do you know what? The only thing that will worry me and worry boxing fans, right? And by the way, guys, you can see Mickey's YouTube page, all right, on the thingy. I'm sure you guys have already done it, but please subscribe to Hellraiser Boxing again. We'll be doing a bit of Q&A at the end of this, all right? So please subscribe to Hellraiser Boxing. And like I said before, if you want to ask Mickey all your questions about how boxing works from the inside, you can ask him on his own flipping channel and stop bothering me. What was I going to say? What was I going to say about the purse bid? I was going to say something very, very witty and very, very intelligent, and then I completely and absolutely fluffed my flipping lines there. But here's what I was going to say, Mickey. What fans like me will be concerned about, right, when Eddie Hearn says he wants to make sure Dillian gets the right deal, right, is that he's going to talk Dillian into doing something that's going to benefit him and Matchroom, but not necessarily benefit Dillian. AKA, he's going to talk Dillian out of taking the fight, right? If the offer made isn't exactly, you know, the most astronomical offer, you know, on this planet, that he's going to talk Dillian out of it. And let me just say one thing, right? I don't work for Queensberry, as people know, but there was a situation that I was privy to in the past, Mickey, where Dave Allen was offered a lot of money to fight Daniel Dubois, right? Dave Allen was offered a lot of money. Now, I don't know the inside information on the figures, but I believe we were talking close to 6 figures, and he was offered a multi-fight deal with Queensberry. But he was offered very, very good money. He was offered more money than he got on pay-per-view to fight David Price. And Eddie jumped in, and Eddie basically sort of took the role as broker for Dave Allen and said, I just want him to get the best deal. And what actually happened in the end was that Dave Allen didn't fight, didn't make any money, and is now fighting on Dennis Hobson Promotions. So can you see, I know I'm a bit of an asshole, Mickey, but can you see the concerns I have there about Eddie Hearn's involvement in this, Mickey?
Right, well, Dillian's had plenty of dealings with Eddie. Right, he's boxed on lots of his shows over a long period of time. So I think his card would be marked. If he doesn't trust what Eddie might be doing is a bit dodgy or shady, he knows him well enough to
It's a very good point. Very good point.
To sort of be forewarned. I'd say he's had more dealings with Eddie than what I have, and I mean, he would know where he lies and how to, you know, to steer his ship, so to speak. But I think it's obvious, right? You want to get that DAZN money involved, because that's where your purse goes from being like one level to being something several levels up. Mm. I think that's a very smart thing for Dillian to do. I don't think he now will tie himself into. I mean, you've got to remember as well, he was actually offered opportunities previously that he decided he didn't want. You know, he could have had the rematch with Joshua when Joshua ended up fighting Ruiz. Yeah. Ruiz. And he decided not to take it. So it's not like he was mandatory for a long time, for a ridiculously long amount of time, but there were opportunities there for him that he could have taken if he wanted. You know, he chose to go a different path, and who's to say that was wrong? He's earned very good money. He's been on pay-per-view shows. He basically has had a standout career already, and he's done that without actually. I mean, the big fight he had, he got beaten. You know, the Joshua, like the marquee name he fought, beat him. So I think now he probably fight. I think it's a good move for him to fight Fury, because the money is going to be enormous.
Let me just say as well, and we'll get on to my next question, actually. I'll throw you a curveball in a sec, but let me ask you, I wouldn't say anything. I had a discussion today, right? And the discussion that I had today was basically revolved around this, right? And see what you think about this, and then I'll throw you this curveball, and then we'll get back on topic, right? Tyson Fury's not going to be pushed around by anybody. Eddie Hearn, the WB, sure, anybody. A deal may be offered to Dillian, okay? If Dillian doesn't take that deal, then Tyson Fury could and this is not inside information, but Tyson Fury could vacate the belt, give up the belt, and Dillian Whyte would end up having to fight like an Andy Ruiz or a Joe Joyce for a belt and earn about 10 times less money. So conversation I had today, right, was basically that Tyson Fury is in a very, very strong position, in a lot more stronger position that people feel, and that he won't be dictated to, and that deal may be offered and for a certain amount of money, And if Dillian doesn't feel the deal's good enough, or if Eddie wants to broker the deal for Dillian and Eddie doesn't feel the deal's good enough, then Fury will become franchise or give up the title. Dillian can end up fighting Joe Joyce, which I think he'll lose that fight, yeah, and not earn enough money, and then that will be the end of him. What do you say to that point of view, Mickey?
Sorry, can you repeat that so I can just get it right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the conversation I had today, Mickey, was basically around. Sorry, it's my fault. I'm not speaking into the phone. I'm speaking into the microphone, but not the bloody phone. It's my fault. Right. The conversation I had today, Mickey, was basically, and again, I don't work for Queensberry. This isn't any inside information.
Yeah.
The conversation today was nobody's going to push Tyson Fury around. Right. Tyson Fury may offer Dillian Whyte some kind of financial deal. So Tyson Fury's team may come to Dillian and say, if you want to fight, you can fight for X amount of money. Okay. Yeah. If Dillian decides he doesn't want to fight for that, then Fury will give up the belt or become franchise, and Dillian can go in and he can fight either a Deontay Wilder or an Andy Ruiz, or he can fight a Joe Joyce to be champion for about 10 times less money in a fight where I wouldn't even make him favorite to win. So the point that was made to me today was, all the cards, they're saying, are in Tyson Fury's hands, and that he's not going to be dictated to by anybody about who he fights next. What do you think to that point of view, Mickey?
No, I think that's pretty much right. But I also think the Whyte fight probably makes sense to him. Look, it's a guy that all the viewers in Britain know him, where the main pay-per-view buyers could be for a Tyson Fury fight. It will sell around the world, but in the UK it will be massive pay-per-view, that fight. Can you imagine the lead up to the show and all of that? It's going to be absolutely huge. I think, obviously, Joshua's going to fight Usyk again.
Yeah.
So that's two huge fights that can't happen because they're boxing each other.
Yeah.
So I think, look, boxing career is short, and with all this coronavirus and all that, it's become a real sticking point with a lot of fighters. They're realising the clock's ticking. The clock hasn't slowed down because of coronavirus. They're getting older, and this short window of time where they have to earn money is running out. I think fight Tyson Fury. Listen, there's no disgrace if he gets beat by Fury.
Mickey, let me explain. What would you put your manager's hat on now? If you're on Team Fury, right? Forget all this now. You're in Team Fury, right? And you've just seen that press conference with Eddie Hearn dictating terms to you. Because that's what it looks like to me, but I could be wrong, right? But I think that's how Team Fury will see it, right? You've just seen this press conference. You've just seen Whyte coming out. You've just seen the way he's pulled out against Wallin. Mickey, what would you do if you were Team Fury? What would you do if you were advising him?
Well, I think Fury's got the stronger hand because he's a world champion and he's a bigger draw. That's the truth of the situation. I mean, Fury probably fill up Wembley now. It's Dillian, with respect to him, I think he would be very popular, but he's not filling up Wembley stadiums at this point in his career. Maybe if he fights Joshua again, he would, but he's not fighting Joshua again. The biggest money, I think they can make a huge offer to Whyte. I think Whyte is, because you can do a deal, so you can go to a promoter and can say, right, we'll go to purse bid. I want you to guarantee we'll get X amount, and anything over that, I'll split the profit with you, because I know if I go in with you, if I go to Eddie Hearn, right, Eddie, you put a bid in for this, and anything over that, I'll split with you. Or I could go to Frank Warren, I could go to Mick Hennessy, I could say to anybody, right, I've got a guy who's mandatory, they've offered me this, I'm not really happy with the money. If we do a deal with you, right, it's just a one fight or a two fight deal, probably do like a one fight deal, I want you to guarantee that you'll put this much in, and anything over that will split between my fighter and you.
Right.
So the promoter then, and the reason that I would do that is because I would do it with a promoter who I know who's got the clout to intimidate the other people that are competing for the rights to put on that fight. Because if Frank Warren thinks he's up against me, he's just going to think, well, I'll just put in a moderately small bid and I'm still going to win it. No point me putting in a 50 grand bid for a fight that I know I'm going to win for 30 grand.
I understand.
But he hasn't got the financial resources through the television and whatever what I have, so he can't afford to put that bid in against me. But then that's pretty much what I think what Whyte is doing here with Fury. He's probably gone to Eddie and said, look, Eddie's, I don't think, because Fury is the champion, meaning that if they go to purse bids, Whyte will get a much smaller purse. WBC, is it 25% goes to the challenger?
Let me just ask you a question. Let me ask you. Sorry, you still there? Yes, all right, you're still there. Sorry, Mickey, bit of a breakup. It's fine. Just a quick question, Mickey. Yeah, someone asked you that. Someone said, Mickey, if they go to purse bid, Whyte gets 25%. But if Whyte were to agree a contract, he will get about 35% plus.
Okay, so that's why I think it would make more sense. But the thing is, you still got to negotiate that contract. And so to do that, you have to put the other people, like the other promoter, on the back foot.
Oh, we just dropped ever so slightly, but I'll just give a bell back. It's fine. Oh, I know why. It's me. 1 second. It's fine. 1 second, guys. It's my phone. I'm just going to get the old burner phone up here. Give me a second. Just get the old burner phone up here. That's all on me. That is. Okay, and let me just call him back. Sorry about that, guys. That's me. That's my phone going tits up here. 0033. Here we go. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm just phoning back. Sorry about that. Put him on speaker. It's all right.
Hello.
Sorry, Mickey. That was me, not you. Carry on, Mickey. It's fine. We're still live. Carry on, Mickey.
Sorry, where was I?
Sorry, we're talking about the split. So you were just talking about the deal there and how you thought they probably come to a deal there because like he was only going to get 25%.
Dillian himself at this moment in time is not a big enough entity to outbid the Zone or BT Sport or Sky Sports even. He needs people to compete with each other, and I think he needs them to take him seriously and put the biggest bid possible down, and that's the way to do it. I don't actually know who advises Dillian these days. I've known plenty of people around him that were sort of working with him when I promoted him, but I mean, that's probably moved on quite substantially now. But he needs to get all these guys going to the edge of their resources, digging deep for the rights to put that fight on. And, you know, signing up with someone like Eddie Hearn, that's perfect. Because there's no bigger player. You know, you're going in against Eddie Hearn. You know that if you want a rights to put that fight on, you're going to have to bid. And Tyson Fury, although he's in a stronger position, it's not all Whyte. Because if he in negotiations with Whyte, he refuses to put in a big enough offer to him, and then they go to purse bids, and he doesn't like what's going on, he doesn't want to fight, he'll get stripped.
Right. Okay.
Which he doesn't. I think it makes better sense for him to sit down with Dillian, do a deal. I mean, it'll be pay-per-view. You can put percentages on the pay-per-view sales, so it's not a fixed purse. Means from Fury's point of view, he doesn't have to write a sort of blank contract or a contract that says like, I'm giving you X amount regardless. You're motivating Whyte to promote the fight, to make it sellable. Let
me ask you, Mickey. Do you think it will happen or not? Because I think you said something interesting. Do you think this fight will actually happen?
I think it will. I've got a really strong feeling that they're going to do it. Because, like I say, Joshua and Usyk fighting each other. Who else are they going to fight? I mean, look, I actually thought Whyte versus Wallin, I thought was a much better fight than he could have got away with giving us Whyte.
What about if you're Fury, right?
Yeah.
Here's an idea, right? Vacate the belt and become franchise, right? And then go and fight Andy Ruiz.
Well, they could do, but I think he'd end up with less money than what he will for Whyte. I think Whyte and Fury will sell massively. I think that's a pay-per-view blockbuster. I think everyone will buy it.
But there's the argument that in America nobody would be interested in Dillian Whyte.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm just not sure that they'd be so enthusiastic at buying Andy Ruiz.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah.
He's not a massive name.
He's not a massive name. Right, let me throw something different at you, right? DAZN pay-per-view. What are your thoughts about that? Because it's coming, Mickey. DAZN pay-per-view is coming. A platform that was originally built on no more pay-per-view in boxing. I don't think I'm being unfair by saying that, right? I mean, they released adverts, right, of basically saying that, you know, DAZN is the death of pay-per-view, where it appears that DAZN pay-per-view is coming to the UK. Is there something that you're interested in? Any thoughts in? Just any thoughts about DAZN in a pay-per-view market, possibly buying BT Sport? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I don't think you can compete in boxing nowadays, modern day era, without pay-per-view. I just don't think that you know, maybe streaming will become so rife that, you know, people will stop buying the pay-per-views and then they have to bring the price down. But I just think at the moment, pay-per-view is where the bulk of the money is. There's only want the biggest fights, the top fights. They put a huge investment in already into boxing. I imagine that's what they're after, the pay-per-view money.
Do you think I'm a bit out of order for banging the drum about this? Do you think that there's something that I'm missing when I say that I don't personally think that Eddie Hearn in particular or Matchroom have been as honest, right, with the boxing public as they should have been? Because I mean, you just come on here, right, and you've told us, right, in 3 seconds, you've just said, look, right, pay-per-view's needed, right? These big fights can't happen without pay-per-view, blah, blah, blah. You need pay-per-view. But that's kind of not what, right, regular boxing fans have been told for the last basically 3 years, haven't they? They've been told a completely different story for the last 3 years. And then this has been switched around on them. So my question isn't really asking you to lay into Eddie Hearn, but my question is, do you think it's fair of me to ask the questions that I'm asking around that?
Yeah, I think it's very healthy to have debate around it, because at the end of the bottom line is I'm a boxing fan too, and I want to see the best fights, and I love seeing the best fights. You know, like the best fighting the best when it's at a reasonable price, especially. But I mean, if Eddie had come in, like, you've got to sort of penetrate the market, and if Eddie had come in saying we're going to be doing pay-per-view shows, and they're probably going to be more expensive than what you're paying now, and you won't get as much free content. So, like, people would have just gone, well, why are we going to bother?
Yeah. No, I see that. I do see that. I do see that.
It's come in that they've put on some brilliant events and some great fights at a very, very affordable price so far in the UK. It's very cheap, unbelievable value. But then, of course, at some point, you know, it's a business. They want to walk away with a profit. Right,
guys. Right, hashtag. Let me just remove his phone. Ask Mickey. If you've got any questions that you want to just ask Mickey in general, could be about anything. Now's your time, right? We want quick fire questions. So if you ask the questions, right, with hashtag Ask Mickey, I will ask them, right? And I'll try and get as many as I can in. While we wait for these questions to come in, Mickey, quickly, did you see any of the Anthony Joshua recent interview on IFL TV? His comeback interview.
Yes, I did see it. Yeah.
What were your initial thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on it. I mean,
let me give you a primer. I'll give you a primer. I thought you threw his team under the bus, to be honest, with some of the comments that he made. That's just me. I thought, you know, he put the onus for the loss completely on the game plan. And my point was, Mickey, and maybe you can start by clarifying if I'm right or wrong about this, because you've actually stepped in the ring. My point that I made was, look, as a fighter, right, you get in the ring, you take punches, you know, most of the time, right, if you're winning a fight or losing a fight, or you know if things are going well or if things aren't going well. And I have a famous saying on this channel, it's not robot wars, right? And sometimes the fighter's got to make adjustments by himself. So do you think that's an unfair comment from me? Did you think Anthony Joshua was making any excuses? What are your general thoughts about it?
I did think he sort of led people that would watch that interview to sort of believe that it was the coach, because he sort of said, I just follow orders, right?
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what he said, Mickey. He basically made himself out to be a robot who just follows instructions.
The thing that marked me the most of the interview was the amount of swearing he did. Anthony Joshua used to be a sanitized product. he used to come on. You know, if you watch his interviews early on, there's no swearing. There was no bad boy about him. It was all, you know, such a nice guy. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. Everything that came out of his mouth was like saying, "I'm a nice guy." Now he's swearing a lot. It's clearly got under his skin, all of this. Who can blame him? You know, look, he was world champion. He got beat quite. Especially, it wasn't like the Andy Ruiz defeat was probably devastating, and it was concussive. But you could sort of say he was winning that fight until he got hit with a big shot.
Yeah.
The Andy Ruiz fight, he's winning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know what you mean.
Hit one shot, never recovered from it. And Andy Ruiz is a recognised puncher in the division. So it's sort of forgive. Right. The Usyk defeat for me was probably more dispiriting for him.
Absolutely. Carry on. I agree. Absolutely. Because
he was outboxed, out-hustled, out-manoeuvred, walked on to all sorts of punishment. And you know, many people. I mean, if you watch my pre-fight, my preview that I did on my Hellraiser boxing channel, it goes into right. I think if he goes to outboxing, I think he gets beat. That's the truth of it. I just think he gets beat. But he's not going to do that. He's going to go. He's going to cut the ring off. He's going to be smashing him up the body early, cutting his legs away, and really working him. And now that's what Josh was saying. The thing is, I'm not even convinced if he does that to the letter. I'm not convinced that he wins. Let me just. I mean, look at Usyk. Usyk is a very, very awkward, fast-footed southpaw. Do you think no one's ever tried to grab him and throw him on the floor and rough him up?
Yeah, of course.
Of course they have.
He's had his whole career. Mickey, he's had that his whole career, Mickey.
Yeah, everyone that I think knows boxing will realise, right, you're fighting someone like that, you don't go and try and outbox them. That's the last thing you do. You have to go, but there's no guarantee that just because you think you that's your plan, that's what you're going to do. Maybe I'm going to throw him on the floor. Well, maybe you will throw him on the floor, but maybe you'll try and throw him on the floor and work out that he's been coming up against people trying to do that to him for his whole career.
Mickey, let me quickly throw something else at you. Then we're going to go through some questions as well, right? And there's a little bit of breaking news as well. You still got time to stay with us for a little bit longer, Mickey?
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying it.
It's good. Yeah, we're doing all right actually. We got 123, Mickey, live on a Friday night. Is actually very good when it's no big fights this weekend. Yeah, so we're doing nice. All right. Let me ask you this, Mickey. I don't know if you caught the end of that. I don't know if it's the end of that interview. Anthony Joshua went into an absolutely bizarre rant talking about how he looks up to gangsters and how he spent his whole career sort of, looking up and looking at the moves of Big Meech and Larry Hoover. Did you catch that part of the interview?
No, I didn't see that bit. So that was in the IFL London.
I believe it was. I only watched 45 minutes of it, but there was a part in it where he started talking about how he looks up to certain guys. I'm not going to play it because I don't want to get done for copyright. But bloody hell, if you just saw that, I agree with you, Mickey. I mean, to me, Mickey, we'll get your last thoughts on it, and then we'll close off on this. It looks to me, Mickey, like he's a bit frazzled mentally. To be honest, like you said, to me, he looked completely out of character. There's a lot of talk about war talk, Mickey. That worries me when I hear fighters start talking about that. And do you know what, Mickey? I'll throw you one more thing. Also, he said the learning is stopping. They said the learning is over. He said, Mickey, there's no more learning now. I've been spending my term learning the sweet science. There's no more learning. Now it's war. Final thoughts on that, Mickey?
Okay. Well, I like the idea of him learning. I don't like the idea of him not learning anymore. I do like the idea of him not chasing this. See when he boxed Ruiz in the rematch? Yeah. Okay. And I made a big thing on my channel sort of saying, listen, he was rubbish tonight. All these people saying, it was a boxing masterclass and that. I said, for me, that's rubbish. It wasn't a boxing masterclass. He looks like a man who's scared of his own shadow now.
Right.
He was a warrior, and now he's fighting scared. And the thing is, it's like, if you had a different fighter, you might say, okay, you're never going to out-muscle this bloke. So you're going to have to move around and you're going to have to sort of try and draw his punches and counter him. But Joshua, for me, is like, as a roughhouse, he's a 10 out of 10. Okay, as someone who can put pressure and impose himself physically, he's very highly rated. as a guy boxing off his back foot, I'm not going to say what grade it was, but it's much lower that I would give him. I don't rate him as a great, considering he got an Olympic Games gold medal.
Yeah, but so did all the Harrison, Mickey. Different sport.
Yeah, I just don't rate him as a sort of counter-boxing, pop and move sort of guy. And I think he tried to do that, which he tried to. That's how he went. And look, he did it against Ruiz, and I thought, yeah, but Ruiz is massively out of shape in this rematch. You could see he was blowing very early on in the fight. His reflexes looked terrible. You know, you could tell he was out of shape. This guy's been partying from probably the last fight till this, you know.
Yeah. All right.
And so why would you go? And I think that Joshua has to go and cut the ring off, get inside, smash Usyk around the body early on in the fight. Early on, not wait till he's sort of playing catch up because he's 4 or 5 rounds down. He has to go right from the off and try and rip his heart out.
Right. Let's crack on with some of these questions. Because the first question I'm going to ask you is about this. No, it's about this, Mickey. It's about this. That's why I'm just because you're going to answer this question before I get around to asking you. Right, James Lord has called in, has asked in. Guys, by the way, 147 now in the room. Ironically, this second stream is getting more viewers than the first stream. Guys, subscribe to Hellraiser Boxing. You can see it on the page now. We're joined by former fighter, manager, promoter, and trainer. Many years in the boxing. They say in the game these days, there's a lot of trainers, but there's not a lot of teachers. You've probably heard that phrase, Mickey. That's what they say. There are no more teachers in the sport of boxing. Well, this man's got plenty of experience, decades of experience in the game. If you want to ask Mickey a question, #ask Mickey. I can see all of them. I'm just not asking them in order. So if you've asked, don't worry. I will get around to that question. And the first question is from James Lord, and it's just on what you were talking about, Mickey. And try and be as brief as you can with these, Mickey, because I want to fire through a fair few of these. Do you believe Anthony Joshua's strength is overrated? Dave Allen sparred him once and said he was hollow. I don't know if you can answer that, if you know, but I'm just going to ask anyway.
Right. Dave Allen, much as I enjoy watching him, is miles below Joshua in the thing. So probably sparring-wise, Joshua wouldn't be going trying to rip his head off. Because Joshua needs sparring partners.
Exactly.
If he smashes him up in one round, he hasn't got a sparring partner anymore. That's just my gut feeling, probably what would have happened there. I've never seen Joshua as a hollow fighter. I see him as a very strong guy. He's boxed guys that I've managed that have told me this. The speed is phenomenal. His arms are very, very long. And the power is unbelievable.
I can imagine. Yeah, it's probably just had Dave Allen in a technical spar, because we know AJ likes a few technical.
Okay, yeah. So I think from Joshua's point of view, certainly, probably Robert McCracken said to him, look, we need 6 rounds out of this guy. Don't go turning them upside down in 30 seconds.
Quick question from my American co-host, my man Shevin. What would you do next with Wilder? Very quickly, 36 years old. No time for a rebuild. Career blighted by injuries. Just been knocked out in his last 2 fights, but putting a hell of an effort. Any ideas what you do with Wilder? Any kind of opponents? Rumors it could be Andy Ruiz somewhere down the line. What? Any sort of general advice to Wilder? Or should he call it a day, Mickey? What do you think?
You couldn't blame him because he's had. I mean, he must have earned some very good money, and he's had. Probably, I can't imagine him being the kind of guy that's going to improve from now on. I don't think you're going to see any better than what you've already seen from him. Technically, he's quite limited. I actually say that I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for. But the thing is, he's fighting as a heavyweight. He's really like a sort of super cruiserweight. So I think, are we going to see? Is he so skillful or so? Even punch so hard that he can make it? I don't think he can. I don't think you're going to see any better out of him. I think he's done very, very well. If he was a family member of mine, I think I would seriously be sitting down with him and saying, listen, you don't need this anymore. He got absolutely annihilated by Fury. Fury led him onto those punches at the end of and it was like watching an execution. He teed him up, and it was painful. No, I've actually met Wilder. He's a nice enough guy, but I found it painful to watch.
So, Mickey,
the finish, especially, he was completely done.
Let me just quickly ask you there. You said you met Wilder. I know. Do you think, I've often said, I think there's been a bit of a change in Deontay Wilder over the last 10 years or so. He seems to be a lot more serious, a lot more political, a lot different to how he was when we first started seeing him on these shores, back when he was coming over to Sheffield to fight Eddie Harrison and things like that. Do you get that sense, Mickey? Do you think, I mean, I know it's hard to say because you probably only met him briefly, but do you get that sense from that the Deontay Wilder that you met or got in contact with like 10 years ago or whatever you did isn't the same guy that he is now or whatnot?
Yeah, I think he thought he was invincible. I think he had that heart that he just thought, whether he was getting outboxed or not, he's got a lot of tricks. If you watch him fight in slow motion, it looks very different than if you watch him in like a. And when I seen him live, I was at the Audley Harrison fight. What he did against Audley was very clever. Against the Olympic Games gold medalist, he like punched one hand to knock it away from his face and knocked him completely out with the other.
Yeah, what Wilder does, he does do that. He uses his jab to break the guard. You've seen him as well. He used the jab and just literally pull the guard apart and then just shove the right hand through. He does have tricks, Mickey. Carry on.
Yeah. So he's probably better than a lot of people give him because he looks very crude a lot of the time. But when you see what he's actually doing, if you watch it in slow motion, you see him punching the inside of the arm to lift the elbow away from the body and then whacking up the body and into it. He's actually quite a clever guy. But for me, his best days are behind him. And what's he going to gain? What's he going to do? Who's he going to fight?
Andy Ruiz, big fight?
I mean...
You're not sold by that, are you, Mickey? No? All right.
No.
All right. Let me ask you this one quickly before I forget to ask you. Someone, and they asked this for the last show, Davies and Dave, mate, don't be too brief, but try and be brief because the questions are coming in. 150 here. We've got Mickey Helliet, promoter, manager. You just spoken there about time you met Deontay Wilder. If you've got questions about boxing in general or the game, by the way, Mickey, we haven't even got around to asking you about Tommy Fury and Jake Paul, which has just been confirmed. So I do want to ask your opinion on that. I know it's not really a trade fight, but it's actually going to be one of the biggest fights this year in boxing. So I want to get around to asking you that and a few more questions. But Davies and Davies up next. He asked Mickey, what is the difference between a boxing manager and a boxing agent?
Well, we used to have agent's license. I don't even think it exists anymore, the agent's license. I think it's now gone in with matchmaking license. The agents used to be the people that would bring... In fact, there's two kinds of agents. There's a foreign agent who brings in the foreign boxers, so you'd have to know like the Slovakians and the Hungarians and the Russians and the Ukrainians and all that.
Yeah, we see them every weekend on Matchroom shows. Sorry, I had to do that. Carry on.
So you bring those guys in. And manager, you sign your boxer, say for... And normally when you're an agent, listen, I've been an agent for years, and you can make more money out of being an agent because if you really know your stuff, as an agent, if you're making fights for the boxer as an agent, you're not on a set percentage. So if I know that promoter will pay 50 grand for that fight, and I know that boxer, he will box for 20 grand, there's a 30 grand difference. No, that's never happened to me, but it's just giving you a blame.
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah.
If you manage a boxer, you're on a commission. So if you're on 25%, imagine the profit is 100 grand, you're going to take 25.
Yeah, okay. Right.
And that's you can't say, well, I know that he'll take it for 20 and I know that he'll pay 50, so I'll take 30 grand profit out. You can't, as a manager, that would be illegal. That would be breach of contract. But as an agent, you could do that. Legally, you can do that.
I'm just looking through. So I'm just trying to go through. There are a few questions that I just want to make sure that I haven't flipping missed. Sorry, I'm scrolling up and up and up. There's a few that I'm not going to ask because there's just a couple that are BS. Like someone's asking you, have you heard any stories about Anthony Joshua? I'm not going to ask that question because while would Mickey answer that, he's got to do business in the sport of boxing. Hold on a minute. Let's just go down here a second. There's a very question from James Lord. Abdul's got a really good question about amateur boxing, but I'm going to ask you this one first quickly, okay? Do you believe boxing is heading into a recession soon? So many shows been cancelled recently at small hall boxing.
Right. The problems that we have with small hall boxing. I mean, I'm not promoting shows at the moment because the moment I saw the requirements of putting a show, it's not workable.
Right.
The thing is, there's a lot of people who, I think the excitement of and the will wanting to put shows on is overtaking the facts of it, the cold sort of black and white of it. And I think quite a lot of promoters that I've spoken to have said, I wanted to do a show, I've done the show, I'm halfway through it now, and I'm just realising I'm going to lose a load of money.
Yeah.
And
Mickey, what is that on? Is that on COVID tests? I don't want to get into the whole COVID thing, but is it the constant COVID tests and all that? Is that quite costly? Are they quite costly?
It's that there's a lot less journeymen. The journeymen are asking, some of them, like double what they would normally ask for because they're in demand. Supply and demand means that they can ask more and more.
Right.
Meaning that putting the shows on is very difficult, and it's. I feel really sorry for the young guys trying to come through. It must be absolutely horrific for them.
I think what we don't realise, Mickey, especially I don't really understand much about small hall boxing, so I don't pretend to be an expert. But I know a lot of these boxers that are fighting, they have to be quite good ticket sellers to make money, you know. So especially the ones who aren't good ticket sellers right now, it's pretty hard to sell tickets in this kind of environment. What are they going to do?
Well, if you just think what I was just saying there, the opponents are asking double the money.
Yeah.
Imagine you've got a lot of guys that are coming up. Basically, like you said, they can't sell the tickets because their personality isn't popular enough. They struggle, and a lot of those guys top up their ticket sales with their own money just to get themselves, build their record, get them out regularly.
Yeah,
they'll do that. Well, now you've got opponents asking for double the money.
Yeah.
So a guy that was asking for, a year ago, 1,200 quid is now asking for 2.5 grand.
Right.
So imagine before he had to top up his ticket sales himself, it might have been for a couple of hundred quid. Now it's 1,400 quid.
Right. Yeah. Brutal.
I'll do it.
Let me ask you about this fight that's just been announced before I forget. You guys can see it on the screen. I know, Mickey, you're sort of a boxing connoisseur, so you might not care much for this, but it's going to be one of the biggest fights of the year. So I'm going to ask you, Jake Paul, Tommy Fury is now announced as December the 18th pay-per-view. Tommy Fury is going to make around 1 million at least. I believe the clause is Tommy Fury, and I think he's had like 7 fights, and he hasn't really looked impressive in many of his fights, which we'll get onto in a second, Mickey. But Tommy Fury, 7 or so fights into his pro career, is going to get at least 1 million guaranteed for this, I believe. And I believe if he beats Jake Paul, he gets an extra $500,000 on top of that. Mickey, I've always said, right, that this YouTube boxing thing isn't going to go away. And the reason I've said it's not going to go away is because I believe that promoters at the minute aren't making fights that people care about, right? And people can cuss to these YouTubers and say, they're not very skilled and they're blah, 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 blah. But people are interested. People do care if they win or if they lose. Do you think I've got a point in saying that? Or do you think I'm being unfair in saying that promoters aren't making enough fights where people just care who wins and who loses? And this whole YouTube market has stepped in and filled that void.
Well, I don't like the YouTube fights, but it's not. It doesn't matter that I don't like them. I mean, people are prepared to buy them. And I remember it was Frank Maloney said to me years ago. He said, "Look, you've got to understand," because I sort of came at him with YouTube didn't really exist in the way that it does now then. I was sort of saying, that's a terrible fight, And he said, stop trying to force people to buy something they don't want to buy and find what they do want to buy and sell them that. That's what he said to me. I thought it was very clever because that's what's happening here. Someone has found a product that sells. And they don't care that boxing purists hate it. Because they're not boxing purists, they're money people. They're people who want to make as much cash as they can. And I think it's going to grow YouTube boxing because people are more and more accessible. So to make Tommy Fury against Jake Paul, it's quite easy to put the event together. And it's going to get to a point where they don't need the boxing board. They don't need like loads of these sort of things. Because if you've got a pro boxer and you're trying to develop him, and his ambition is to win like the Southern area, then the British, then you need the boxing board. You've got to go through them. You haven't got any choice. But the YouTube guys are never going to be a Southern area champion. They're not good enough. They don't need that. They can say, well, the boxing board wants to charge us this and make us do this and make us do. Well, we don't want to do it. They're here just to make money. They're not here to support boxing in the long term or anything like that. To set up gyms or they're here just to make money. And they'll just say, okay, well, we won't use the boxing board. We'll get other medical people. We'll get a lawyer in to do all the insurance. It will cost us much less and it'll be a lot less hassle. Let's do that.
What do you think, though? Do you think that these YouTube boxers are exploiting things in boxing? So let me throw another to you. I would say Jake Paul is probably one of the best talkers or the best self-promoters in boxing. Do you think there's a case that a lot of these boxers are not very good or don't spend enough time on self-promotion, on getting themselves out there, on talking, on engaging in social media? And these guys have come along again, right? And they've stepped in and they filled a void in the market.
Right. When I get a new guy coming in, and a lot of them are good boxers, and doesn't click in their head. They don't understand. Yes, you've got to be able to fight, but increasingly, and the biggest thing is that the guys that earn the most money aren't the best boxers.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
No, they're not. You've got guys that are very good boxers end up as journeymen, fighting people 3 weight divisions above them, because they're too good to fight people their weight. No one wants to box them. And then you've got others who, I've had guys. I had one guy who was 16. I'm not going to mention his name again. He was 16-0.
Yeah.
I could have made a fight with him and another guy who was 16-0, who was out in America, and we could have got them both rated, world rated, and they could have fought each other for an international title, meaning that then they're guaranteed, like it's the top 15 world rating. Neither of them could really fight that well, but they were going to fight each other, and they would have. My guy would have got $20,000 for that. And he was just, without being rude to him, even though I mentioned his name, he wasn't any good. That's the truth of it. He was no good.
Right.
I should look at his record. I didn't know whether to be proud or ashamed. Just matched him carefully, and this will prove that what I'm saying. Listen, he got to 16-0. He started getting all sorts of people blowing in his ear. He then, I remember I was in. I can't remember where I was. He was in New York. He rang me up saying, "I'm not happy." I said, "What? So you're in New York, you're 16-0, you're not happy?" He went, "Yeah, I've just been moving around with chocolate." Okay, what are you talking about? Chocolate. Right, chocolate. Peter Quillin.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember Peter Quillin. Yeah,
okay.
I remember him.
The Cuban. So I'm like, right, you're in New York, you're 16-0 and you're not happy. Well, I'm not following this. He said, well, guess how much he got for his last fight?
That's Peter Quillin.
I'm like, look at the people you've been fighting, right? You've been fighting guys that have lost, 40 of their last 41 fights.
Yeah.
And then rematching them, because I was matching you that carefully. Peter Quillin's been fighting Olympic medalists, world rated number, top 10. Can't you see there's a bit of a difference? But that's boxing. This guy could sell massively ticket wise. He was and he wasn't exactly a YouTuber, but it was that same thing. If you can get enough people to put their hand in their pocket and fund this machine, then
fund it.
That's it. It will work. Look at Peter McNeely. What was his record? Although he then went and got a massive payday against Tyson, so then you can sort of, even from a boxing point of view, maybe you can justify it. But most people don't end up with that.
Let me ask you this. There's a question here, right? I'm going to ask you my own question on it. The question is, Mickey, he says, it's from JBDO. He says, word is that Jake Paul has a clause in his contract that means he cannot be knocked out. They're asking you, A, do you think such a contract is plausible? And I'll add on to that, Mickey. What's the worst contract clause, or what's the funniest contract clause you've ever seen in a contract, or what's the most ridiculous clause you've ever seen in a contract? Like, what the fuck is this?
I can't imagine that you could make a proper fight where you say he can't be knocked out. Well, I mean, what are the consequences if he does get knocked out?
I have no idea. I just seen the rumor go around on the internet. I just thought I'd think.
Okay. The strangest clause wasn't for a fighter. For Mike Tyson, we were going to take him to Dubai.
Oh, wait, hold on. Mike Tyson. What were you going to take Mike Tyson to Dubai for? To do what?
We were going to take Mike Tyson to Dubai because he's a Muslim, and obviously Dubai is a Muslim country, or Muslim emirate, and they were very keen to have him. And one of his, they sent this contract. They had like a standard contract for him, which he had to follow to get him out there. And one of the things was the room temperature had to be between this and this. He had to have fresh pistachio nuts and dates brought to the room every day.
Oh my God! Anything else?
Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
I thought that was a bit sort of divish. It was a bit.
Do you think Mike actually knew about that? Do you think Mike actually said, "Yeah, I need to have fresh pistachio and dates every single day brought up to my room, and the ring has to be a certain temperature"?
Where did it have come from? I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe his handlers even pressed it. I don't know.
That is absolutely bloody bizarre. All right, let me ask you, switch it up a little bit as well. I want to ask you about Claressa Shields and what you think about her MMA, boxing. She recently had a loss recently in MMA. Just want to ask, you got any thoughts about Claressa Shields in general? She's someone who's very, very divisive in the sport, not very, very popular at all. Some people are saying that she really should be focusing on boxing, and that the fact she's doing both MMA and boxing at the same time is kind of speaking to like how sort of little money's going around in women's boxing in a minute, that the premier boxer in the world, female boxer in the world, has to sort of do that. Do you think that's sort of an indictment on the sort of the finances in women's boxing, that somebody of that stature would have to sort of almost make ends meet by doing two sports? Or do you think
she's a good fighter, she's a good fighter. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. It tells you, for whatever reason, they're not earning the money that maybe, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, that the talent is not reflected in the payday. And then someone probably far worse than her, that's got big boobs and a nice smile, she might go.
Yeah, I got it now. Carry on.
Yeah, can go and earn probably more than what she has with less than 10% of the talent.
Yeah, and I think there are ways to make that money outside of boxing as well. Some really smart fighters have found ways outside of boxing to make large amounts of money as well. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there. All right, guys. I don't want to get you in trouble. If you want on the stream, I will go straight into a whole rant about that. But I don't want to ask about that. Guys, last few questions for Mickey, because we're going to be going off in 5 or 10. Mickey, in the meantime, while I'm getting these last questions in, feel free not to answer this. Actually, I probably should have asked you off air. What's the nature of some of your other businesses? If you don't mind me asking. If you can't answer, that's fine. But any sort of
construction and property management.
Very nice, very nice. Right. You said you're doing much better in that, didn't you, than you said you're doing in boxing right now?
You know what? I've refurbed half a dozen flats, which I should have done years ago. And the rent has gone up massively on the flats when I sort of get a new tenant in. And the only reason why I haven't done it before, because I've had my schedule so busy with boxing, that I just let everything. See, when I first started off that business, boxing was on the side of that business.
Right.
The properties. And then now, the property stuff got nudged out. But then I started not exactly resenting it, but thinking it doesn't really make sense to not be pushing those businesses and be spending all this time running around, going to Derby and then finding
an endless supply of pistachios for Mike Tyson.
Yeah, for example, yeah. So then. So when I saw this coronavirus, I just thought, right, shut that down right away. Right, we're not going to do. And look, I remember I won the purse bid for the British and Commonwealth title fight between Philip Bowes and Akeem.
I remember that. I actually remember that because he was trained by Mackenzie, who I used to talk to a little bit. back in the day, Mackenzie. Carry on.
Okay, and then MTK came and bought it off me, and it was I was really glad that MTK did that, because it would have been a horrible situation. You know, it was after the COVID had started, so it would have put me in a really awkward position. So thank God they came in. They put the fight. Listen, they were brilliant to deal with. They put the fight on. Unfortunately, Philip got beat, but at least he got his sort of shot, and he was Commonwealth champion anyway. And you know, I think the penny started to drop. That I thought, right now, I've got to spend a bit more time on the other stuff, and the property had suffered because of neglect, because I've just not really sort of been interested in it. But then now, right, back into that.
I was going to say, one of the last questions. James Lord. Oh, God. Well, I think we all know this. I'll ask this one first, but I think we all know this one. I'll quickly get this one out of the way. Flynn Deeper says, what threat does Whyte pose to Fury? I mean, anything can happen in the boxing ring, right? I guess.
Yeah.
You never know. What, out of 10, Mickey, if you had to give him a chance, Whyte, out of 10, or percentage chance?
I'll tell you why I think small, because Whyte is open to the uppercut, and Whyte sits down. Right, Fury's got a very good uppercut. Big, tall guy, can punch over the top of your guard, and can also bring that uppercut up. And that would be my worry with Whyte, is that he tends to sit with his head. So he's actually not that short a guy, but he really sits down low.
I know exactly what I did that I went to the gym for the first time in 2 years last night, and Shevon's got the pictures for guys in the chat. I've literally got bruises all over my head from sparring, because I was doing exactly that. I was up on the inside where I never used to be, but I haven't got any legs because I've done no cardio in 2 years. So I found myself up on the inside, and I sat down with my head right on the line. I dipped over and dropped my head right down the line, and got uppercutted about 5 times, Mickey. And that's what you think is sort of what might be Whyte's sort of kryptonite in those fights. Squats down in his shots, head comes over the front foot. Carry on.
Whyte's a good body punch. I mean, if you were to say what would the tactics ideally be to counteract what Fury does, well, you'd probably say get your feet in close and go to the body early on. Well, Whyte can do that.
He says he thinks, just out of interest, Mickey, he says, and I think this is actually quite a good point, he says he thinks Fury's slowing down. You know, Fury looks as hittable as he's ever looked in his most recent fights. Do you think there's something that we're missing here? Do you think we're sort of seeing the sort of not the end of the line, but do you think we've seen the best of Fury now? Like the best of him, because he doesn't look very elusive anymore to me.
Well, I thought his second fight against Wilder, I thought he was absolutely spot on. I thought that was the best I've ever seen him looking. That was only 2 fights ago, but I just think he needs to be more active.
Yeah.
And I think then we might actually see him catch up with where he could have been already.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was out. To be fair, he was out there for 2 years.
Yeah. Look how big he got. You know, the weight he piled on.
I mean, and the other thing is Dillian as well. Dillian looked terrible as well. Do you know what, Mickey? One of the last questions I actually want to ask as well. I don't know if you can answer this, right? I don't know if you can answer this. So if you can't, it's fine. But I don't know if I asked you this last time, and I want to ask you it now. Okay. I had somebody come on this show, all right? I'm not going to mention names, but I had somebody come on this show, and the topic of Dillian Whyte and Oscar Rivas came up, right? And what I'm going to ask you is this. I've got to be very careful what I say here, but just out of interest, if you were managing Oscar Rivas, right, and there was a chance that the opponent may have had some kind of issue, okay, before the fight, right? Involving some kind of urine sample, right? And your fighter had got in with said fighter, and nobody had told you that there was a potential problem there. So if you were one of us, sort of Oscar Rivas' team, and you found out after the fight that there may have been a problem with a sample of some sort, and that the fighter knew, the promoter knew, and lots of people knew, but you didn't know, or the fighter didn't know, is that just something that happens in boxing? Is that just a boxing thing? How would you feel about that? Would you be?
I I would feel very aggrieved at that. I'd be very, very upset about that.
Okay. I think that's probably best.
Yeah, people would hear my voice.
It's bizarre. Have you ever heard about something like that happened in the sport before? In your experience?
I've never heard of a fight being testing positive and then no one knew about it, especially the other boxer. I think you've got to let that boxer make the choice. Does he want to fight?
Does he want to fight or does he not? Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or not? I can't. But was Dillian confirmed? What was the situation? They just suspected, and it was.
Oh well, I don't. I got to be careful. I don't know what's going on. Do you know? It's just bizarre, isn't it? I mean, I had somebody from Sky call into the show about certain things, and this came up. It was Spencer Fearon, everybody knows. I had Spencer Fearon calling about that, and we had a little back and forth about that. But I just thought, I just thought I'd ask you that because I get accused of being, all kinds of things, right? And this and that, and to me, I think that's a very, very fair question to ask. Particularly ask, why wasn't Rivas in particular sort of given the choice? Do you know what I mean? And let me leave it at this, Mickey. This is my final question. And you might not be able to go with this, but this is how I'm going to sort of leave it for now. That's we started off by talking about Whyte and stuff, and that's my number one problem with Whyte. Mickey, my problem with Whyte has never been a personal problem. I've never met him, this and that. I don't have anything personal against him. But my biggest problem with Whyte is like the contradictions that sort of, come across, he's on record as saying that Anthony Joshua's on performance enhancing drugs, and he's quoted as saying that, and I've seen the videos of him basically insinuating Anthony Joshua's on performance enhancing drugs. But when he has some kind of potential issue, right, then we can't question that. Does that make sense? Then all of a sudden, we can't question that. People like me aren't allowed to ask questions about, B samples and what's happened. If we ask that, all of a sudden we're keyboard warriors, right? And then we see things like Dillian Whyte, calling people cowards, and Andy Ruiz won't fight me, he's a coward. Fury's a coward, Wilder's a coward. All these fighters are cowards, but as was mentioned at the beginning of the show, he's had opportunities against Pulev in the final eliminator. He turned that down. Turned down the final eliminator against Ortiz, and also turned down an opportunity against Anthony Joshua, which I personally think he was right to, because I don't think the money was quite adding up there. But do you think it's fair for me to ask the questions that I asked? I think that Dillian Whyte is a man of contradictions, and I think that, Mickey, a lot of people don't want to ask these questions because they don't want to be on the end of a left hook from Dillian. I think that's what it is. Do you think there's any truth in what I'm saying? Or do you think I'm full of shit there?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Put that again.
That's right. So I didn't talk into the phone. Let me paraphrase that. I just said basically that I think Dillian is a bit of a man of contradictions, and I don't have anything against him personally, right? Yeah. But I said that I feel that a lot of people in the media are quite scared to ask the questions about Dillian. So scared to ask questions about what happened before the Oscar Rivas fight. Scared to ask questions about Dillian. Dillian in the past has accused Anthony Joshua of being a drug user, right? Yeah. So my point is, do you think what I'm saying is fair? I mean, I feel like I've got nothing against Dillian Whyte personally, but I feel like on this channel we try to start asking questions, that other people won't ask. So my question to you is, do you think that Dillian has said things that are a little bit hypocritical, a little bit off, and do you think there's some kind of do you think certain people in the media are scared to ask him certain things, scared to ask him questions about why have you said this and then done this? You know what I mean, Mickey?
Okay, so that's quite a few different questions.
Sorry, I apologise about that.
That's right. I've dealt with Dillian a lot. I've never found him at all. I never, in my dealings with him, I've never had reason to question his integrity. And I've not found him hypocritical. What you said there, though, of course, if he's, tested positive for something that he shouldn't have taken, which I believe he did early on in his career, there's something intrinsic in that is hypocritical. You're a boxer, you're supposed to obey these laws and be super fit, and when it took whatever Jack 3D or whatever it was called.
Yeah. To be fair, I think he bought that off the counter or something. I think it was like.
Yeah, that's what okay. But then, so I can understand why people would then say, oh, well, maybe, right, I don't blame that. But I can just say in my own dealings with him, he was very decent.
Right.
And that's for him to saying when Joshua hasn't tested positive.
No.
I think anyone could be forgiven for looking at Joshua's body and saying, well, he looks like he's on juice. But how can you can look like that just from eating cleanly and training in a certain way. And I think, look, the reason we have the tests is to prove whether people are clean or not. And if he's had tests and they've not proven that, I don't see how anyone can sort of justify accusing him of
doing that. All right, we'll move on.
Maybe him because his rival, he can't stand the fact that the guy knocked him out. I don't know. Maybe that causes an issue for him.
Let me finish up with this. The state of British boxing. Last time you came on, you were pretty positive about the state of British boxing going forward. I still think that I can't see any signs of any sort of big stars coming through. I mean, some of the boxing you've seen recently on Sky, you've seen Eubank recently box on Sky. We've got Savannah Marshall coming through, who's about to fight Clarissa Shields on Sky, and some other boxers. Are there any boxers out there at the minute, Mickey, that you look at and that you just think, he's good, he's interesting, he keeps being interested in the sport, he makes me want to watch his fights, other than the obvious, the Furies and the AJs and stuff. So any other boxers out there that you just think, he's good, or I could be interested in watching him, or blah, 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 or what do you think about that?
Tell you what, there is a guy that I signed just recently, and I haven't even seen him fight in the flesh yet. Right? So maybe wait till I see him spar in the flesh, and I get a proper sort of a picture of where he's at. But I've seen videos of him, and there's a load of things in the videos that I really, really like. Okay. Just little things that I look for, like the head movement, the balance, punch variety, little things called Ernie Rutherford. Keep an eye out for him. Okay. But then your viewers probably haven't heard of him. So, the one that people will have heard of that I'm looking for is Daniel Dubois.
Joyce.
Joe Joyce, sorry.
Joyce, don't you? Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Joyce. But does he make you want to watch? I know he's exciting to watch, Mickey, but does he really for people who are sort of, a bit disillusioned with the sport, does he make you think, Joe Joyce is fighting? I really want to watch that. If he does, fine. But, do you know what I mean?
Okay, but imagine, so he just had the fight with Daniel Dubois, which was high profile, was a big and to me, he looked slow to me previously. He went and boxed Dubois. I thought tactically and technically he was brilliant. I thought the shots he was walking Dubois onto, the pressure that he asserted was perfect. He sort of suffocated him, and it made me think this guy's got levels above what he's shown so far. That's why I'm excited about him, because I want to see him in more of those sort of marquee type fights, which then will catapult him into the picture with the Furies, the Joshuas, the Whites, those kind of guys.
So I know I keep saying one last one, but I do want to quickly fit this one in. It's about training. You've done a fair bit of trainers, right? Done a fair bit of training in your time. It's a bit of a double barrel question. You hear a phrase these days: not enough teachers, lots of trainers, lots of glorified padmen, but not enough teachers. And James Lord also asked the question. He said, isn't it about time that boxers realise that their job is more than just training and fighting? They need people to care, not a training video of them running uphill. So actually, maybe that's not part of the question. That question was going back to what we said about YouTube boxing and how boxers fail to self-promote themselves. What do you think the state of training at the minute is in this country? Because I'll tie it into Anthony Joshua. We know Anthony Joshua's looking for a trainer. Looks to me like he's thrown Rob McCracken under the bus. He's saying things like he should have gone to America many, many years ago and looked for a trainer. What do you think the state of boxing training is in the UK? Do you think there's something that we're missing that they're doing in the US or whatnot, Mickey? Any thoughts on that?
Do you know, when I get a good kid, like really good quality fighter from the start, if I think that they're good enough to do something like high level, before I sign them up, I say one thing: I want you to come to America and train with me.
Really, straight away.
And You're going to pay for it. You're going to pay the flight. I'll pay my flight. You're going to pay your flight. So you need to start saving up in your day-to-day earnings. You've got to put that aside now, because I don't like, so saying like in Vegas, I don't like the guys, as I was talking to you earlier about Zambano, who was based out there. I don't like the guys really. I mean, he was earning good money. I mean, he's from Brazil, Zambano. He's not particularly from a rich family. For him, it was almost life-changing, going out there. But the guys that are out there sparring day in, day out, year round, it's not good. It's very, very hard sparring. But what I do like is taking guys out there for a couple of weeks.
Any particular gyms, Mickey? Just carry on. But any particular gyms that you like?
Mayweather's. There's a place called City Gym in Las Vegas.
Isn't the Mayweather gym famous for wars? I hear it's just non-stop wars down there, Mickey. True or false?
There's a lot of wars in there. Well, to be honest, all the gyms out there are very physical. It's very physically demanding. But to go there for 2 weeks, I'd say go out there to fight for 2 weeks. They're sparring with people more experienced with them, because you've got probably like 30 top 10 in the world fighters within a 10-mile radius. So you've got all these guys that you can go and spar with. Also, it's very physical, the sparring there. They don't like standing on the outside pecking and poking. It's about getting inside, big body shots, coming up for it. And it's a good school, it's a good education for them coming into the throes of their pro career, to go through that early on.
What about the training? Is there any difference? You've mentioned the difference in the sparring out in the States. Is there any difference out in the training that you see there? And someone's asked Mickey, I can't remember who it was, but on top of that, Mickey, if there's any trainers that you that you want to just like, you think, oh yeah, it could be famous trainers or trainers we don't know about, but any trainers as well that you think, oh yeah, I would like my fighter to go to him, or he's a really good trainer, or
it's a weird one, because it's not. I would definitely. I mean, there's definitely something in that where there's trainers that can be very highly rated, who I've worked with, some of them, and I just think, this guy doesn't really know what he's doing. Obviously, I'm not going to name them, but guys that I've just been, they've been very high profile, and I've just thought, this guy's clearly latched onto a very good fighter, and that has boosted him as a trainer. Because imagine my mum starts training, some top 10 guy. That guy doesn't suddenly become rubbish. The only time you really find out what the trainer's worth is when a fight goes wrong. Right. When the wheels come off, when it starts going badly wrong, and the trainer can somehow get into the fighter's head and get him to adjust and turn his tack right. That's a good trainer.
Do you think that Rob McCracken did that in the Anthony Joshua fight? Just briefly before we carry on, I want to carry on talking about this, but I don't want to go back too much to Anthony Joshua. But just, do you think McCracken did that? Because that's what people are heading with this.
What, did he get into Joshua's head?
Yeah, because you just said there, and I think what you said is very, 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 very poignant point you made. You said you find out the true worth of a trainer when the guy's losing, when the tactics need to be changed. Do you think McCracken? I'm not trying to get you to say anything bad about McCracken, but do you think that McCracken did enough in that corner when things were going wrong?
I think that's a very difficult thing to put on Robert.
Yeah.
But I didn't like, when he had the rematch with Andy Ruiz, I didn't like the way Joshua boxed at all. Right? Some people were lauding it as a display of, but I hated it. But the thing is, Robert, I think, good fight, very good fighter himself. He believes in his way of teaching, and his way is like quite, I don't know, old school. Yeah,
what's he like? Tell us. What's he? Because we don't know. We've never met him, or we've never been in the gym. What's he like? What are some things that McCracken likes, doesn't like?
Okay, well, and I've not worked much with him. I've spoken to him a few times, and I've had fighters fight his fighters. My impression of him is a very, very clever, intelligent, knowledgeable guy with lots of experience, and just a very good trainer. Same as everyone else, I heard people saying brilliant to Joshua when it clearly wasn't going well for him.
Maybe they were just trying to pep him up there. That's what I said. Maybe they were trying to, bring up his confidence.
I tell you what, let me give you one last story before I go, and you'll see where I'm coming from with this. I remember once someone ringing me up saying, right, I've got a trainer, and this trainer now is very well known.
Right.
Right? He's like known as a top trainer.
Okay.
And my mate said to me, he goes, right, I've got a guy fighting at your call. He's got a new trainer, inexperienced. I don't know how sort of good or bad he is, but I'd like you to go in the corner as well. Can you just go in there? Like, just say you're doing his cuts and you can just oversee it and make sure it goes well.
Yeah.
I went, yeah, okay, no problem, I'll do that. I was at your call anyway with other fighters. I said, yeah, I'll do his corner. So before the fight, we sat in the changing rooms, and actually the fighter had boxed one of my mates when I was boxing for Watford Boxing Club. Anyway, he just said to the fight, right, they're just sitting there in silence. Sat there in silence. And like I say, the fighter that was being looked after boxed with my guy. So I was aware of him, and I knew he was like southpaw, and he had certain things about him. There was no discussion about any of that. Right? We sat there in silence. Then the whip came round and said, right, sort of 30 minutes and you're on. The trainer, all he said to the boxer, he said, big time.
Wow.
Looked at him, he went, big time. Listen what happened, right? So I started thinking, what's going on? Big time. Then we sat there, he wasn't even warming him up. Big time. We then went, he gets his gloves on, we went into the thing. In the corner, he just looked at the fighter and said, big time. Yeah, big time. Right, and I'm just thinking, right, this guy's a crank. This is the fighter goes out. He was getting the crap beaten out of him, and then suddenly he landed one shot. The trainer shouted at him, "Big time!" Right? How ridiculous is that?
Mickey, we're all trying to work. Sorry, carry on. We're all trying to work out who this is. Carry on. Sorry. Right.
Then the guy throws a shot, knocks the prospect, because it was a journeyman. He knocks the prospect spark out.
Right.
And then he walked back to the corner, and the coach shouted at him again, "Big time, big time." But okay, so firstly, I thought it was ridiculous. I thought there's no technical. I mean, it's just completely. It's like watching a movie. This is like garbage. And then I thought, maybe I don't know. Right? Maybe this is me being stupid, but I just thought maybe he just knows the right thing to say to that fighter at that time.
Right.
He said big time, and that somehow G'd this bloke. I mean, listen, I still think it was garbage, but the fact is, his guy was getting the hell beaten out of him. He was boxing awful. He landed one big shot and knocked the guy out, and then they're going on about big time. And maybe he knows the fighter, and that was just the right thing to say to him at that time. He said it, and it worked. So who am I to say that was wrong? Because 9 out of 10 trainers wouldn't have been able to pull that fight around, and somehow this guy talking garbage did. Right, so maybe Robert knows if I panic, Anthony's going to panic.
Yeah.
Right? Reassuring, well, look, it clearly wasn't the right thing to say because everyone could see he was getting outboxed. And
Have you got time for just a couple more questions, Mickey? I'm taking the piss here.
Go on, mate. Go on. No, I don't mind listening. I'm away in France till Sunday. So
right. There's got a few more. Yeah, that's right. Just a few more. To ask you one more. And again, I want to ask you what you think about this, right? Because AJ basically saying, right? He's saying that. I'll ask you general thoughts about this, whether you as a manager or a trainer would accept this, right? So he's going around and he's seeing all these different trainers in the States, right? And he's come on IFL TV and he's basically said, look, Rob is going to have to decide if he wants to work with this guy. I'm going to pick a guy and Rob can stay on if he wants to, right? But he's going to have to work with this guy. So I'm going to spend X amount of months with this trainer. I'm going to spend some time with Rob. So basically saying, look, I'm not sacking Rob McCracken. Rob McCracken's not coming out of my camp, but Rob's going to have to be prepared, Rob's going to have to be prepared to work with somebody else. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Now, let me ask you as a trainer, do you think that's disrespectful? Would you accept that if you was Rob McCracken? And do you think Rob McCracken will accept that? AJ basically saying someone else is coming in, right? I'll happily keep you on, but you'll have to work it out with them we'll have to split time between each other. And if we can't do that, then that's the end.
Right, I'll tell you, I'll be very, very honest with you, right? The sort of money that Joshua is generating, I would say yes, I will do that because I'd want the payday.
Yeah, we understand that.
Okay, that's me being bluntly honest with you. Right, as a man, as a boxing trainer, as a human being, would I be happy with that? Of course I wouldn't be, because this is what I think. I think in an ideal world, right, I wouldn't dream of sending a fighter out to America on his own for sparring and training. I just wouldn't do it. I would, but right, Anthony Joshua's first trainer in the amateurs was Sean Murphy, who boxed in the same amateur club as me. So I know Sean, I managed Sean's son, funny enough, Danny Murphy.
Okay.
Now, Sean Murphy was British featherweight champion, boxed for world title, was a Commonwealth Games gold medalist, good fighter. So if I was Anthony, I would get Sean out there with him. Right. Because Sean knows him very well. Right, Robert's employed by GB Boxing, or England Boxing. He can't just up sticks and disappear because he's employees. He's got I think, from what I'm aware, he has obligations to do with that. But if I was Joshua, I would get someone who he trusts and who he knows, like Sean Murphy or Johnny Oliver, probably Sean Murphy, because Sean was his first trainer. And Sean Sean's dad is a brilliant trainer. Probably too old to go out to America now, but that's what I would do. I would go out with someone I know to America, and then that person can sort of, see, when I take these guys out to America to Vegas sparring and that,
yeah,
I spend as much time as I can with them, talking, discussing different things that they did, and next time he does that, why don't you try doing this? Because you were coming unstuck a little bit at that point, and if you did it this way, it might open up a different solution to. And you're working with them, and I'm learning about how they work under pressure. So when I'm managing them further down the line, I know, right, he worked well to this or reacted well to it. But that guy reacted well to big time. Right, that he must have learned that. The trainer must have worked that out somehow.
Let me let me just quickly say as well, do you think, like, the way in which, you said you take guys out to America?
Yeah.
Do you, like, would you do what AJ's doing? So you spend like a day with this trainer and then go and see this trainer, spend a day with this trainer, spend a day with that trainer, spend a day with this trainer. What do you think about that? Is that the right way to go about that? It's all about five trainers. It's all about 5 trainers out there.
Yeah. I suppose you could get an initial feel for what they're about. But like I say, I think in an ideal world, I'd go out there with someone I trust, and I would bounce with the person I trust. I'd bounce all my sort of feelings and thoughts off there to work out. Because that, like, say for example, like a Sean Murphy or a Johnny Oliver or something, they know Anthony very well, and they could probably come out with some constructive sort of contributions. They could sort of help him make up his mind as to what he wants. I don't think there's a saying in there: too many chefs spoils the broth. I don't want a fighter in the corner listening to 3 different people. I mean, I can't see. That becomes even more confusing. I'd rather just have like one vision. Look, I think Joshua's really got his work cut out
already. Yeah.
Can he outbox Usyk? I don't think so. So again, I felt that before. If you see my preview on the Hellraiser boxing channel, I go on and on and on about this. And if he tries to box this guy, he's going to get outboxed. That's what I think. He's going to get outboxed. I can't believe that he's going to possibly even consider going down that avenue. He's going to go there and be the dominant pressure fighter and put it on Usyk and break his heart. That's the only way I can see him winning this fight. That's what he has to do. It's not even a choice, really.
I tell you what, Mickey. I tell you what, a really good place to finish, actually, some current news. And someone asked about this name. And again, we're not trying to get you to say anything bad. We'll just, say whatever you feel. Tunde Ajayi is a name that's come up in this chat. And obviously, we had that very, very interesting press conference, right? Between Pat Barrow. I don't know if you caught it, but
yes, I did see. Yeah.
Tunde Ajayi is somebody, right, that has a very, very, is a very, very polarizing figure, right? I've only ever spoken to this guy very briefly in a past life on Twitter DMs. Very nice to me. I've never had a problem with him. I think he might be a little bit somewhat misunderstood, but what is your general view, just in general? You haven't said anything bad at all, but just anything, your thoughts on Tunde Ajayi and particularly training Mickey, because I think part of the reason why Tunde gets quite a bit of flack is down to this pad work that he's doing with Anthony Yard and things like that. Some of the pad work he's doing with Anthony Yard, that Mayweather style pity patter pad work, and people think that's a load of that, it's very useless. They question some of the things he says in the corner. Just if you can, you don't have to, but just any thoughts on Ajayi, because it's someone that people are mentioning in the chat.
Well, look, this is the one thing that I would say, right? I don't like all that. I don't mind that Mayweather pads thing. Actually, I think it has its place, but I don't like. I'm sort of a bit more traditional. Like if I was training a boxer, I would incorporate some of that, but I wouldn't have. That wouldn't be the bulk of it. I'd have a lot of just like traditional pads. Okay. What I will say is, for all his lines in the camp and stuff like that, that's a bit like big time, isn't it? Like lines in the camp. But he maybe knows what motivates his fight. Like, I think the fact was he just came up short because NDR probably isn't as good as Kovalev or Arthur.
Right.
That's it. He just came up short. But they've earned a lot of money and they've had a lot of good opportunities. And right, so in answer to your question, I don't like that. If I was a fighter, I wouldn't want to be just doing that sort of flashy pads with lines in the camp and kids chanting in the, that's not for me. But you have to say, well, they have done well out of it. Okay, they've had help from Frank Warren, which is a big part of what, he's had, no doubt, his role to play and all that, and has probably, helped them along. But they have earned a lot of money. He's been top of the bill in big shows, televised events, and can't totally criticise that. That's something that is above what many people achieve.
I mean, it's a hard one, isn't it? It's hard. I just wondered if you met him and he was a really nice guy. Because sometimes, honestly,
I have met him, and he's always been very polite and perfectly decent. I mean, look, being a good trainer isn't about being a wonderful guy and being very polite, but I mean. I know. I never found him arrogant or full of himself. Like, he comes across when you read things on Twitter, and I've seen the thing where they put the Portuguese guy laughing, and then they put subtitles in. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. Of course.
Smith put it, and I did think, that's funny. But it's a bit unfair, probably.
Going back to the roads, wasn't he? Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to
versus Pat Barrett, but I mean. I don't know, Vicky. Yeah, I just thought I'd ask. And I mean, the general consensus on the pads is, I mean, I've really never done pads properly, but I need to go back to doing them. I've really hitting the pads is something that I've never really done. But when I go in the gym, I tend to spar shadow and hit the bag. But that's just me. I'm a moron. But the general view is that you should try to really practice combinations that you're going to throw in a fight. Now, I know some people, like those kind of Mayweather pads for hand-to-eye coordination and this and that kind of thing. But I think the general consensus is that, there's a kind of a backlash, certainly on social media, against those kind of trainers because, people are saying these people are sort of fancy downs. Really, you're never going to throw those combinations in a fight. So why are you doing that shit on social media? What do you think about that?
Well, I think this is what I think the problem is with it, is that there's people who can count, who can learn those sort of Mayweather-style pads, even though they don't really know they haven't had a proper boxing education. Right. But it looks good, it looks flashy, looks very fast and loud, and it's impressive to people that don't really know maybe about boxing. So, the problem comes in when then you get someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. They learn how to do a little bit of Mayweather pads. It looks great. People get hypnotised by it.
But the fundamentals are missing.
But the fundamentals aren't there. Yeah, exactly.
Mickey.
That's right.
Mickey. Final thoughts? Any final thoughts? We've promoted your Hellraiser boxing. You'll see it on the.
Please do, and I'll do the same on my channel.
Oh, don't worry about that. Yeah, it's all right. I mean, trust me, I'm not. I'm trying to stay on.
Listen, I used to love watching your blogs, your things previously. So I did watch quite a few of them.
That's all right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So don't worry about that. I think last time we did this, a few people hit you up on the videos and said Ultra sent me and stuff.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, got good followers from it. And
your final thoughts before we go. Any thoughts that come into your head, Mickey, about the following? Any thoughts that come into your head about the state of boxing in the UK, where you're at with boxing, how you feel about coming back to boxing? Do you still have the passion for boxing? Are you eager to come back? Do you want to come back? Is there any point in coming back? Does it make any monetary sense to come back? Mickey, this is your own personal therapy session with Uncle Ultra. Let it all out, Mickey.
I think the state of boxing is pretty good once COVID is out of the way. The problem that we have at the moment is that every different facet of the industry is blighted by this disease, or not even by the disease, because the disease, the average death of COVID is 85 or something.
Yeah.
So boxers, obviously, none of them are 85. So why are we?
Be careful, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. So my thing is, look, once the COVID is out of the way, then I think we're in good shape. I will certainly be coming back into boxing, but I can't justify at the moment in a business where it's basically near. I mean, the medical side of it, the fact that there's no journeyman, the fact that you can't sell as many tickets as you need to make the shows. See, like when I do the small shows, I don't even do it to make money. I just do it. If I break even, if someone said to me, right, you're going to run 20 shows this year, you'll break even on all of them, will you take that? I'll take it in a shop.
Why, Mickey? I want to ask you. This is your last. I just want to talk about you. Why? Why would you do that when you've got good property business? You're making money. Why?
Because when you've got those shows and they're not losing money, you can run 20 shows a year, and you can develop. My thing was always about develop. I'm like a manager who coincidentally promotes rather than. So say like Frank Warren or Eddie Hearn, I would say primarily how I see them anyway is they are promoters who coincidentally manage. Their main business is promoting these big shows on Sky or BT Sport or the Zone, stuff like that. And they do manage fighters, but their main business, I would imagine, is that. My main business is managing loads of fighters, bring them. But at the moment, it doesn't make sense for me to put all my resources into it because the financially we're restricted. Too many things there that stop it from growing. But once all this is out of the way,
I'll be honest with you. Do you know what it is, Mickey? And I'll say this: that maybe sort of I'm at a place for saying this, but it's like a lot of people are in boxing, right? Because they don't have a plan B. I'm sure you've seen that with fighters before. Even some of the gyms I've seen it, people think they're going to be world champions. They've got like no backup plan, like whatsoever. Like they're not saving for a rainy day. They're like, they've got no backup, right? And you seem to have actually got, a reasonably good backup plan going on. It seems to have got quite a lot of things going on in your life and are very busy with these things, right? Okay. So what I'm trying to get at, and maybe I don't get it, but I'm trying to get at why you want to put yourself through all this crap that you get in boxing. Fighters putting out at the last minute, people messing you around. Mike Tyson wants his pistachios. I'm trying to get into why do you want to put yourself through that when there's a lot easier way to make money?
Addiction to boxing.
Is that really what it is?
Yeah.
Do you think, Mickey, that I'm just making this up as I go along? Do you think that the fact that you didn't have much of a pro career because of that brain scan, do you think that's got anything to do with it? Like you couldn't be a part of the sport at the pro level. Your career was robbed from you. So maybe you try and make up for it.
This is the thing. I've spent my whole life learning from very young age, learning obsessively about something, becoming qualified in something that really doesn't pay financially massive. Sometimes we've had really good years, but there's no guarantees, right? Look, at the moment, boxing's earning nothing. Peanuts, tiny amount of money. So that probably... I remember when I first failed that scan, I actually fainted, and just the fact that I put my heart and soul and worked and worked and worked and worked on the understanding that somewhere down the line, I know this is going to work out well for me. It's an investment. I put it all in and I failed the scan. Everything's finished. That really rankled with me. Actually, when I woke up from fainting, I remember just thinking, what am I going to do now? That's like completely, well, by doing the training young kids and managing, it means that all that effort I put in didn't go to waste. I can put it into something that actually is still of use to me and use to people that are around me. That's it.
Yeah, it is what it is.
That's it.
What would it last? This is the absolute last question.
The last one.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mickey. I'm really sorry. Sorry, but at least I'm listening and asking. What would it take for you to? It's a bit of a stupid question. Is there anything that would make you stop? Is there anything other than a pandemic? What do you see yourself working in boxing forever? Like to your 80 years old?
I think I always will be involved in boxing. Because it's therapeutic to me. Do you know what? Even as a kid, it was therapeutic. I was going through a very difficult time. It held me together. And because of that, that's why I stick to it. Because I know whatever I go through in life, boxing is like a constant friend to me. It's always there. And that hurt a lot when I failed the scan because my friend, my dad left when I was young. Different things went wrong. Boxing was always there and always motivating me. And then suddenly when I failed the scan, it was like this thing that had always been there as a safety net for me disappeared. But I managed to sort of scrape it back.
Do you think you would have been a very different person had it not been for boxing?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know what would have happened to me. I wouldn't even want to think about it.
Mickey Helliet.
There you go.
There you go.
Until next time, Ultra. I've really enjoyed being on your show. I hope that you get lots of views and retweets and whatever from it.
No, it's all right, Mickey. And listen, mate, and more from not. I hope you're all right, guys. That's it. That's the end of the broadcast. Mickey, just hold on for 5 seconds, guys. That's the end of the show. Thank you very much, and good night.